Look, we're skipping the standard intros today because what we need to cover is absolutely urgent. Consider this your high-stakes intelligence briefing on the hidden mechanics of global power. If you think the geopolitical map is static, or that global conflicts are only fought with tanks and peace treaties, you're honestly looking at the wrong battlefield. The rules of global dominance have completely changed, and today we're going to expose exactly how this invisible war is being waged.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just listen to this quote from the Asia Research Institute. A nuclear war started by AI sounds like sci-fi. It isn't. That should honestly send a chill down your spine. We often assume we're living in a period of relative global stability. But World War III, it's not going to be announced with sirens. It is already being fought right under our noses. But the weapons aren't traditional. They are algorithms, complex global supply chains, and sovereign debt traps. The battlefield is entirely invisible to the naked eye.
So let's start with Section 1, the invisible economic war.
Because this illusion of global peacetime, it's hiding an intense, relentless economic conflict. 99. Just take a second to let that number sink in. 99 years. That is exactly how long of a lease China secured on Sri Lanka's Hambantota port. When Sri Lanka couldn't repay the massive infrastructure loans provided by Beijing, they had to forfeit control of a major strategic asset for an entire century. Superpowers are no longer just expanding borders, they are weaponizing infrastructure to create absolute, inescapable dependency. They're literally buying the keys to nations without firing a single shot. This isn't just a bad financial deal, it is a profound shift in sovereign control.
So what does this actually look like on the ground? It's a system often called debt trap diplomacy. It starts with opaque, really high-interest loans handed out for massive infrastructure projects. When a nation inevitably defaults, they forfeit sovereign assets. But it goes so much deeper than that. These commercial ports have what's called dual-use potential, meaning they can easily be converted into military naval bases. Ultimately, the borrowing country completely loses its geopolitical decision-making power. It's effectively a 21st century form of colonization, and it is rapidly shifting the balance of power in South Asia and far beyond.
Which brings us right into Section 2, China's hidden debt empires.
Now, this is not happening in isolation. It is a highly coordinated strategic maneuver to encircle rival nations and gain absolute control over the world's most critical maritime choke points. Take the Gwadar port in Pakistan, for example. On paper, it's just a commercial investment, but strategically, it gives Beijing direct proximity to the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most vital energy supply routes on the entire planet. They are transforming a commercial foothold into a massive strategic military advantage, fundamentally altering regional security.
Geopolitical analysts actually call this strategy the string of pearls. By quietly securing ports and infrastructure from Myanmar down to Sri Lanka, over to Pakistan, and all the way to Africa, China is effectively building a maritime fence right around India. This completely shatters mainstream assumptions about peaceful maritime trade. Make no mistake, these aren't just trade routes, they are heavily fortified geopolitical fences.
But the oceans are only half the battle. Let's move to Section 3, Weaponizing the AI Revolution.
Because we have to shift our focus from physical ports to the digital realm. We're watching an intense AI arms race explode between the two major superpowers. Generative AI is not just a cool tech trend for chatbots anymore. It is rapidly emerging as a lethal, decisive geopolitical weapon. On one side, you have the US, leveraging elite talent pipelines and actively using export controls on advanced AI chips as a weapon to literally starve rivals of computing power. On the other side, China possesses the world's largest AI talent pool and is pushing incredibly hard for technological independence. A perfect example of this, China's launch of the DeepSeek large language model. It proves they can rapidly innovate and scale domestically despite those heavy US chip sanctions.
And the stakes here? They are absolutely massive. The more AI gets woven into our supply chains, the more vulnerable those chains become to geopolitical weaponization. In this invisible war, hyperscale data centers are literally the modern equivalent of military bases. The nations that control the semiconductor supply chain and the underlying data infrastructure, they hold the keys to future global influence. If your supply chain relies on foreign AI, your sovereignty is already compromised.
So how is the rest of the world reacting? That brings us to Section 4, India's supply chain pivot. With the US and China locked in this massive standoff, India is stepping up. They're emerging as the ultimate global swing state to challenge the current dynamic. $24 billion, that staggering figure is the size of India's Production-Linked Incentive, or PLI scheme. spanning 14 critical sectors, from electronics to pharmaceuticals. This isn't just empty policy talk. It's a massive, government-backed injection of capital designed to supercharge domestic manufacturing and physically pull global supply chains away from total dependence on China.
In corporate boardrooms, this strategy is known as China Plus One. Now, to be clear, it's not about completely replacing China. That's just not realistic right now. It's about strategic complementarity. Global buyers are actively trying to dodge U.S.-China tariff volatility by tapping into India's massive demographic dividend. We're talking about 1.5 million engineering graduates entering the workforce every single year. However, winning in India requires deep, on-ground intelligence and heavily structured quality control. It doesn't just happen on autopilot.
This sets up a fascinating dynamic. Section 5. The U.S.-China-India Triangle.
The clash, cooperation, and frankly, the competition between these three titans is going to dictate the global order for decades. Just look at the difference in their approaches. China is all about brute force scale, blazing fast speed, and complex electronic ecosystems. India, on the other hand, is carving out a totally different edge: engineering-led manufacturing, custom technical solutions, and crucial geopolitical neutrality. They aren't even playing the exact same game. They're dominating completely different halves of the global supply board.
But, and this is a massive but, we cannot ignore a terrifying choke point. Even as the US and India pivot and attempt to build alternative supply chains, China still controls 90%. Let that sink in. 90% of the entire global rare earth processing market. These minerals are the lifeblood of electric vehicles, smartphones, and advanced military tech. This single choke point gives Beijing massive asymmetric leverage over the rest of the world.
Which leads us to our final chapter, Section 6, the multipolar world order.
So where does this all leave us? Right now, India is walking an incredibly complex geopolitical tightrope. If we analyze the long-term psychology here, it's brilliant. India is cooperating with the West through the Quad, but simultaneously sitting at the table with China and Russia in BRICS. They are actively positioning themselves as the voice of the global South. And the domestic psychology is just as powerful. Nearly 70% of Indians expect their country to reach world power status within 20 years. They refuse to be a negative superpower that just disrupts things. Instead, their strategy aims to make India the world's first development superpower, lifting up its 1.5 billion citizens.
If we map this out concretely on a timeline, the trajectory gets really clear. See, China plays the long game. They think in decades, not four-year election cycles. But India is doing the exact same thing. 2026 is slated for the massive acceleration of the China Plus One pivot. By 2036, experts project a fundamental rebalancing of trade and strategic relationships in Asia. And 2047? That is India's meticulously calculated target date to fully realize its superpower vision, aligning perfectly with exactly 100 years of independence.
So I want to leave you with this one provocative thought to chew on. As the era of traditional warfare takes a backseat to something much more pervasive and silent, when algorithms, sovereign debt, and global supply chains become the new weapons of mass influence, you really have to ask yourself, who truly controls your technological sovereignty? The invisible war is happening right now in the devices in your pocket and the supply lines that feed your cities. Keep your eyes open, keep questioning the surface narrative, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.